This is the final word with Adam Collins. That's me, and he is Jeff Lemon, and we are back for the Indian Premier League 2021 here on YouTube a couple of times a week with what we're calling the Speed Round, Jeff.
What the Speed Round is about, it's a little bit different to when we do detailed match wraps and analysis. We might just be picking a few little bits and pieces out of each game, things that caught our eye, things that made us want to talk to you about them. So that's what it's about, skipping through a number of games in an efficient span of time.
And in doing so, let's start with the first game, the tournament opener. On a sluggish pitch there at Chennai, RCB got over the line from the final ball. But what we were thrilled to see, first and foremost, was our IPL correspondent, Glenn Maxwell, hitting some massive sixes in the middle of that chase for the RCB.
Look, as some of our viewers suggested, it may have been the confidence that infused into Maxi by being named the final word IPL correspondent that made him come out and whack a couple over the rope. Happy for him purely because there was so much scrutiny on the fact that he didn't manage to hit a six during the last IPL. It took about 5 minutes this time around. I was so excited that I recorded a solo video that night. I didn't even have you to help me, but I just had to talk to people about it. But I chatted to Dirk Nannis about it in the last couple of days, and he's played a fair bit at Chennai, and he said that stadium, that hit, to get it out of the ground is a massive hit. So he was impressed, we were impressed, and I'm sure you enjoyed it as much as I did looking back on it.
I did. I also enjoyed Kohli opening, as he foreshadowed in the T20 internationals against England. Then Maxi in the middle, AB finishing it off, albeit not quite to the end. He got himself run out, running about 100 metres to get back for a second run.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out how this works, how this happens. Maybe you've got a better idea than me, but what is it that we see a lot of players do this? Amy Satterthwaite did it recently, the New Zealand captain as well, deciding to swerve around a bowler and add about 12 yards onto the run. When you're trying to get up and back between the creases as quickly as possible, why do players curve? They often curve, and AB came down one side of the pitch, crossed over, and went back up the other side of the wicket.
Yeah, I think it goes in and out of fashion as to how to turn it. For whatever reason at the moment, that is. But the fact that AB fell in such a high-profile game, the opening game of the tournament, who knows, maybe it'll go back out of fashion and I'll go back to the old-fashioned Dean Jones style, turning with one knee on the floor. We'll watch through the course of the tournament. The second game, the Delhi Capitals held their nerve against the CSK. They were able to haul down 188 with a couple of overs to spare in the end. And it was some players from the Delhi Capitals who we haven't necessarily seen for a while stepping up.
This was exciting with a number of players across the board. So Chris Wokes bowling extremely handsomely. His handsomeness has been missed while he's been sitting on the bench for England through all of those T20s. Managed to get an edge caught at first slip. Like, how often do you see that in a T20 game? It's not a very common method of dismissal. But then for CSK as well, Suresh Raina coming back after missing the whole previous IPL and just reaffirming his claim to second spot. So he's the second highest run scorer in IPL history. Conceded a lot of ground last season because he wasn't there. He had the likes of Shikhar Dhawan and David Warner creeping up on his tally, but he's now got the foot down and trying to stay ahead of them. So that was nice. And also Ravindra Jadeja coming back from injury, made some runs, batting quickly down the order, and he was the other candidate for comical run out of the round because he didn't run himself out, he ran Suresh Raina out, but he turned around, got about 5 yards back down the pitch and ran straight into the back of the bowler, who was just standing there. Now, it's not like he'd come out of nowhere. It wasn't a surprise, but Jadeja just cannoned straight into him and then said, "Oh, no second, thanks, mate. I'll go back to this end," and sent Suresh Raina back and completely torched him.
There's a lot said about siblings and the advantage that a younger sibling will have over an older sibling over time. And that was certainly the case with Sam Curran plundering his older brother Tom for 23 off and over.
Yeah, not entirely. The first boundary wasn't Sam Curran, but he batted a couple of sixes, was getting right back in the crease and just pounding it away. We saw what Sam Curran could do with the bat for England in that fifth ODI when he nearly pulled off a ridiculous win there. Taking on his own brother and bashing him around the park was a particularly amusing little postscript, I suppose. And then on that comeback theme, a couple of players have been dropped from the Indian team recently, Prithvi Shaw and Shikhar Dhawan. run, an opening partnership worth 138. Prithvi Shaw had a couple of drop catches in there, but I'm particularly excited to see whether he can go on with this boom. He's such a boom-bust player. 237 runs in his first 2 test matches. Later ended up getting dropped from the test team, came back and made a mountain of runs in Indian domestic cricket the last couple of months, and he could continue that through the IPL. It'll be good to watch if he does.
We are ready to rock in Chennai, said Mark Nicholas as KKR started their game against Sunrisers Hyderabad. And they got over the line by 10 runs, defending 187. KKR aside, a lot's been said about through the off-season, but at the first time of asking, they put in a good performance.
I loved that Mark Nicholas start, said in his very proper tone, we are ready to rock in Chennai. It just, I'm imagining him side of stage at those Springsteen concerts, like he claims to have been to several hundred of them. And it was pretty rock and roll. Nitesh Rana and Rahul Tripathi just bombed the place, and what stood out to me was how many of their sixes went into the second tier. Just time and again, they weren't just hitting sixes; they were monstering sixes. That huge partnership that they put together, and that ended up being the decisive part of the game. But in terms of things that I really enjoyed seeing, it was Harbhajan Singh popping up again, bowling and almost taking the wickets of Australian batsmen. There was so much time spent this year looking back at the 2001 series, 20 years since that breakthrough series for him with the 32 wickets he took in that series. And then here he is bowling to an Australian left-handed opening bat, a la Matthew Hayden, getting David Warner edging to backward point, where another Australian drops the catch. Pat Cummins came across and spilled the take. So Harbhajan Singh can still draw false shots from Australians all these years later.
He'll be going forever. As you know, I've just finished making an audio documentary about that 2001 series, spending so much time thinking about the great man Harbhajan. Seeing him bowl again was a real treat. And the fourth and final game that we're dealing with today was the first real high-scoring thriller. Punjab Kings, the artist formerly known as Kings 11 Punjab, getting over the line against Rajasthan Royals by 4 runs. And so much debate and speculation around the tactics deployed by Sanju Samson at the death there for the Royals. What an outstanding innings it was, a breathtaking century, but declining the single in order to hit the 6 off the last ball. If it works, you're a genius. And if it backfires, well, you're not a genius.
I thought, on reflection, there wasn't that much to lose at that point. So if Sanju Samson takes the single, gives Chris Morris the strike, Morris needs to hit 4 to win, which, having recently come into bat, might be a less likely bet than Samson hitting a 6 off 2 deliveries. So he gave himself those couple of deliveries, turned down the single, but he still had the assurance that if he hit a 4 off the last ball himself, they would go to a super over. So, a 4 would tie it, a 6 would win it, and in the end, he went for the 6 and was caught just on the boundary rope. He almost had enough of it. So it was a wonderful night for him nonetheless, but also a really good night for KL Rahul. Didn't get the century because Rahul Tewatia is contractually obliged to do something spectacular in each game, and took a ridiculous catch on the boundary line, the juggle, step out, throw in, do-si-do, hokey-pokey, left foot, right foot sort of deal. But KL Rahul with that 91, there seems to be this pattern that if you get dropped from the Indian team, you come in and make a stack of runs early in the IPL. So that was a particularly special start from him as well. And then Chris Gale batting at first drop, making 40 in quick time as well, and looked to be timing the ball really nicely.
Yeah, continuing to turn the clock back, Chris Gale. And a couple of very wealthy young Australians in the Indian Premier League this year. Jumping Jai Richardson and Riley Meredith, they took some serious tap. 2 for 104 from 8 overs collectively.
Yeah, they got absolutely battered, as tends to happen when you bowl fast on occasion. It doesn't always work out for you. Did pick up a couple of wickets, and I suppose if you take a wicket and win by 4 runs, that's the main thing. But how impressive was Chetan Sakaria on IPL debut in bowling in an innings where you've conceded 220-odd, and he picked up 3 for 31, wicket in his first over, took wickets late in the game, just remarkable to see, and the joy on his face as he had a dream debut, really.
And now we're going to come to the end of the speed round now, but some housekeeping, important housekeeping. 1, Glenn Maxwell back on the show later in the week after the RCB's second game. 2, we're going to do a watch-along, Jeff. We've never really done one of these before, and we thought we'll give it a try. Sunrisers Hyderabad, RCB, an Australian influence in both teams, which is of interest because, of course, we know those players quite well. why not? We're going to be live about, 5 or 10 minutes before the first ball?
Yeah, something like that. Technical issues notwithstanding, we'll see how live we can get, and hopefully people will be able to tune in and watch the game with us on Wednesday night.
And the last point to note is that we're going to make the speed round twice a week, usually about Monday and about Friday, depending on how the weeks play out with the schedule and so on. But let us know what you want us to talk about. We're not going to go through blow by blow on the game, as you'll note today, but pull out whatever interesting little baubles from these IPL fixtures that interest you, and we'll try and talk about them here on the IPL Final Word Speed Round with Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon. Let us know on Twitter. Let us know in the comments. We love to hear from you all the time. It's been an absolute joy making this channel throughout the course of 2021 so far, and the IPL will be no different. So thanks for your company on the first edition of this show, and we'll be back later in the week with Glenn Maxwell, a watch along, and another go of the Final Word Speed Round.
Hasta la vista.